So Nosferatu
Yeah.
is the original. This is a remake based on a 1922 German silent film.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
In which they loosely / totally blatantly stole the story of Dracula.
You can use loosely, very loosely.
It tells the story of Count Orlok.
1922.
1922.
It just struck me that this is over 100 years
Over
later.
100 years old, and it went into the public domain in 2019.
Wow.
So, because there was a lot of issues with it and stuff, but I thought I'd bring a little fun fact here. The original film was actually deemed a copyright infringement. The widow of Bram Stoker, which I think her name is Florence, and she was like, "Hey, I don't want this around. This is infringement on my copyright." And she actually won, and all the original copies got destroyed. That was what was supposed to happen. And thanks to whoever over the years, we have been able to piece it together. I say we, like I helped. I wasn't part of that.
Tim was heavily involved.
Humanity has been able to piece it together to a form in which we could watch it now. But it was technically supposed to be destroyed.
Wait, that's the only reason we have a way to watch it now?
Yeah, because people found different versions of the movie, like clips and things like that, and they pieced it together over the years.
I did not know that. That's wild.
Yeah, it's actually pretty amazing. So if you go to Wikipedia, you'll see a horribly put together piece or version of the movie where it's all different colors, all different like frame rates and visuals and stuff like that of like the original one that they tried to build, but now it's been remastered with a soundtrack, and that's the version. Watch the new version. But the original had no music either. The original, when it was first in theaters, it did, but the new form after it was supposed to be destroyed has no music.
The like jigsaw puzzle version.
Yeah, and
Weird.
it's not great.
I mean, it is, and you can see it even more in this remake. It is Dracula.
It is Dracula, but I think Dracula's better.
Sure. I mean, yeah, but that's what's so weird about this is it's like, oh, inspired by it. It's like, no, bro, like you just told this is the same story.
Yes.
And like I said, it's even amplified, even more amplified in this version. I did watch Nosferatu, I think 2 years ago for the first time. And I think we talked about it on the podcast, but it's a, if you're a horror fan, if you're interested in the history of like monsters and things like that, I think you should watch it. It's not easy to get through.
It is a hard watch.
Yeah.
And if you're a fan of horror, it is cool because it is like almost the origin of horror movies.
Yeah.
Given the tone and how scary Nosferatu looks like.
Very
and it's funny because he's not like, his name isn't Nosferatu.
Right.
That's just to describe what he is. Again, he's Count Orlok. But yeah, he's always been terrifying to me.
Yeah, he's very scary.
Very scary. But when you watch the movie, like if you sit through it, he's not scary. Like he's very goofy looking. And until you get to the iconic scene where he's like standing there in the hallway and staring, he's like creepy looking, but it's more goofy nowadays.
Yeah. I mean, you can easily see how terrifying that would be if you haven't seen something like that back in the day. Literally over 100 years ago. That's messing with me.
Insane.
But we are talking about the 2024 version.
Yes.
Which somehow captures the same energy of the original in a way that is both positive and negative, I would say.
Yes. It has its best traits in mind, but also some of its worst traits.
And it's weird because I have been trying to figure out how to articulate this, but I feel like the movie feels the way it probably felt in 1922. I don't know why
1922. You were losing your blood.
Like I don't. I just died 1920. I don't know if that makes sense, but like the first one has slow, boring moments.
Yes.
This one, not to kick it off with negatives, but it has slow, boring moments. I mean, it's just a very long, drawn out story, or not even story, but film, I would say, because it honestly feels fast paced in regards to the Dracula story.
Yes.
Like it moves you along. But there are just moments where it's like it's dragging, but those could also be seen as these really beautiful, like gothic epic moments.
And that's a huge highlight for this movie because it is so visually stunning and impressive, and like the set design and the costume design is so perfectly captures the feeling of the movie.
It really does.
I remember you and Mom were commenting on the outfit that the main character, well, one of them, Thomas, was wearing.
Yes.
And it was
I want that jacket.
It was a cool jacket with like a neck piece, and I was like, it's so weird that people dressed up like this because it's so like cool, but is it practical? Like, do you think he was warm with that extra
I mean,
neck
he
piece?
looked pretty warm. Yeah, it's
He
probably
looked-
more practical than like, me wearing shorts and a hoodie in January.
It's true.
That's what it's evolved into.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the costumes and that aspect of it being a period piece, it was really, really beautiful. I mean, there were so many shots that I was like, okay, I could just sit and look at this for a long time. Particularly when Thomas goes to meet Count Orlok for the first time, there are so many shots that just like hang. And it's clearly intentional. And those are not the moments that feel slow. Those are the moments that are like, okay, hang here for a minute. That's beautiful. Everything looks so, so cool. And it's so haunting. And I gotta say, Nicholas Hoult is like, bro, he sells how terrified he is in that scenario. Like, I felt afraid because of how afraid he looked.
Yes.
It was creepy to look at, but it's not visuals we've never seen before. Granted, they're beautifully done, but him in the lighting of Orlok's castle, while Orlok also just insanely played by Bill Skarsgård.
Yes.
Literally unrecognizable.
I had no idea it was him.
But his voice at first felt a little over the top, but grew on me as like one of the best parts of the character.
Yeah, and that was something that stood throughout the whole movie is everybody acted so well. Like, I felt like we were really immersed in the world. And it's funny because Count Orlok is, like you said, a little bit over the top. Like any normal person who showed up there and this guy was like, it's me. Like the way he talked, the way he looked, you're like, I got to get out of here.
That was one of the things that I thought was so great about it too, was how ambiguous they kind of kept. We're at a point we don't really need to be told what Nosferatu or a Dracula character can do, right? So what I appreciated was they sort of kept it ambiguous. Like, you're as much in the dark as you can be about a character that's been around for over 100 years, you know, or even longer. When was Dracula written? Do you know?
Ooh, 1800s,
right?
Yeah, 1898 is
How
my
wild
guess.
is that? That's so crazy. So that aspect of watching Orlok just be terrifying, and the people he's having these various supernatural effects on have no idea what's going on. That really was the fear of the entire movie. It's just ominous, and I will say there were a moment or two where I felt like there was a little bit of, I don't know if I want to call it like pretentious or what, but it felt like they were kind of really pushing a character just staring at the camera lens and screaming. And it was like, I know that's a thing that we do in modern horror where it's like, this is just so intense, this character can't even handle it, and it's unsettling to watch someone make eye contact and scream for this long. But there was at least one moment where I was like, all right, like I get it, like this person's panicking and everybody's scared, but like, I don't know. Do you know what I'm saying?
I agree with you. I think, and maybe it's something to the director being Robert Eggers.
Eggers, yeah.
Eggers. And his movies, like with The Witch and The Lighthouse, and not so much The Northman, I guess, but where there are these shots that are drawn out to the point where it teeters on like being and again, I know you didn't want to say pretentious, and maybe that's not the right word.
Maybe
but
it is, though.
Maybe it is.
Maybe it is the right word.
It's very much like super artsy.
Yeah.
And it's like you feel like you're watching experimental film.
Right.
Which I guess the original Nosferatu was experimental for its time. So
Right.
maybe he was trying to capture that feel.
I think there's some of that, and I totally appreciate it. It like I said earlier, there are some of these really long hanging shots that are beautiful, and I like artistic things like that, which is why I think I've enjoyed his other films. I haven't seen them all, but this definitely felt in atmosphere very reminiscent of The Witch.
Yes.
And
even to the point where the dialogue is very much Shakespearean.
Oh,
where,
right.
Where they're talking in such a like classical English way. And I'm back and forth about that. I still don't know if I love it, because sometimes characters are having a conversation and I don't know what they're saying.
Yeah.
Because they're saying words that I'm like, wait, what does that mean again?
There was some of that in this one. At one point, I was sitting next to our mom, and she leaned over to me, and she's like, I don't understand a thing that guy's saying.
And so like that that's cool because it makes you feel like you're watching like a historical play or something.
Yeah,
but it also is a detriment because sometimes it gets so boring.
It can be, yeah. If you're not able to latch onto what people are saying, that can be tough. But on the other side, I do like that it feels as theatrical as it does.
Definitely, it does feel like it adds to the overall feeling of being immersed into the world.
Yeah, it's very much a dramatic horror, and I think some of those elements add to it. Some of those elements maybe are what make it drag a bit. It's also not a short movie at 2 hours 20 minutes. It's nothing crazy.
Yeah, nothing too long, but definitely over 2 hours at least.
I think the design of Orlok could be a thing of controversy. I don't know how people feel about it on the whole. I haven't seen too much about it yet, but very, very different from the original design. I think I grew to, well, some aspects. I think I grew to really like it by the end.
Yeah.
It was a more, I gotta say, the finale is...
That is definitely the strong point is because you see a lot of things, because this movie's very dark throughout the whole thing. You are, because he's a vampire, he's got to be there at night. So there are times where you get more light depending on where he is in the story. And so when you get near the end of the movie, it's a lot more well lit, not regarding sun, but just it's well lit. So you get to see him more as the movie goes on. And he does look cooler the more light there is.
Yeah. And the other thing, I don't know if there is a thing with, this is a Dracula Nosferatu plot point, but he's getting stronger throughout the movie.
Yes.
And maybe that's part of what they're revealing to us throughout. I couldn't really tell because it's so dark early on. You can tell he's a little bit more feeble, but some aspects like his hands and things like that were reminiscent of the original, but mostly in his face. And as he gets, I guess, stronger throughout, his shape shifts a little bit, and he looks a little more human in this, but there's also very obviously something otherworldly about him, which is just a different kind of creepy, which I think at first I was like, meh, but by the end of it, a mixture of his voice, the way he looks, and there is a really big sort of monstrous payoff where you're like not quite seeing him the whole movie until you are, and you're like, all right, I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. He is something that you are more interested to see as it goes on. I did really like the sound design.
Yes, I did too.
There were some sounds in there that'll certainly make you realize you're watching a horror movie.
Yeah, that's very true.
Which was cool. So like, I like a lot of the things that build it up. I don't think I love the final product.
Yeah.
I think I left the theater a little more disappointed than I'd like. Like, it's not one that I'm dying to see again, or where the story really stuck with me as much as I'd hoped.
Sure.
But it was a fun romp. I'm glad I saw it in theaters.
A fun romp. If you guys watch Nosferatu, I want you to just think in your head about how Tim called it a fun romp.
It's a fun romp. It's you'll be laughing. You're gonna have a good time.
Disney's Oliver and Company's a fun romp. It's not a fun romp.
It's an enjoyable film. Yeah. But I am struggling if I want to call it a keeper or sleeper.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is there anything else you want to discuss with it as far as like just overall? Presentation was beautiful.
Yeah.
I thought it was acted really well. I thought all the elements are so strong.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It just left me. I expected to be scared more, and I thought the design was going to be scarier.
I think here's where I'm feeling a little jaded and kind of having a hard time is I know I've seen so many versions of the Dracula story. So there's a part of me that is, I feel like I'm rewatching a movie no matter how I'm watching it.
Yes.
Because I know it. I know the main plot points, I know the main beats. The last thing I saw that was really like, I was heavily into it because they delve really deep into certain points of the story that I haven't seen before is in the BBC Dracula. It's a 3-part series.
I still got to watch that.
Unbelievable. Like that I would rewatch. But watching this, I'm watching the story progress in a way that like I already kind of know all this. So while I really love the visuals, I'm not getting anything super new. There are some aspects that are varied from other tellings of vampire stories and of Nosferatu and Dracula in particular. But none of it felt like enough where I was like, this is awesome.
This is like my vampire movie.
I think maybe for the visuals,
yeah.
it's a keeper. Like, it's definitely not a bad movie. But I think I'm having a hard time getting over the, like, I know the Dracula story. I'm glad we have this. Here's what I'd say about it. It's cool because Nosferatu is such an iconic moment in film history in general. It's cool that we have an updated version that I feel like artistically does the original justice.
Yes.
I think I could say
so.
that easily.
And I was skimming through the movie today a little bit, and there are some shot-for-shot recreations.
Yeah.
Specifically, there's a point where he's like, Thomas is pointing a mirror at himself to look at his body.
Yeah.
And it's almost one-to-one to how it was in the movie. It was really cool.
Right. I forgot about that shot. So, okay, here's a question. If someone was asking you if it's worth watching Nosferatu, would you tell them to watch the new one instead?
Yeah. Well, not only, but the original is such a hard watch. For even if you're a fan of horror, a fan of vampires, fan of classic cinema, it's slow. You definitely got to find the right version too, because you could easily find one that doesn't have music. You need the music with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely an updated version of the older one and a more digestible.
That's a good way to put it.
More digestible version. It's. I think I'd give it a keeper, but it's nothing that like wowed me like I really wanted it to.
I would also say thematically, it's got some really interesting threads of love, of course,
sin, very heavily with sin. I felt like,
and sacrifice, and that was the point where by the end I was like, oh man, that's heavy in a way that I wasn't really, I guess I wasn't really honed into until literally the last scene. And I was like, wow, this, like, the theme of sacrifice throughout is really, you didn't even mention, this just reminded me because one of the characters that talks about sacrifice is Willem Dafoe's character.
Yes.
And I didn't realize he was in it. I should have, because it's a Robert Eggers movie.
Right, he's in everything. He was my favorite part of the movie.
He's great. He's so good.
He's kind of like a Van Helsing character in a way.
He is a little bit, right. Yeah, he did feel that way. And he adds a levity in a way.
Yes.
He's not like a comedic character by any means, but he somehow adds a levity to like a very, it's very heavy. This is not like, Eggers does not make movies that like feel good. You know what I mean?
I think it's a fun romp. No, but I agree. All of his movies are so...
Yeah, The Witch is a rom-com. You should check that out.
They're so dreadful. And I know you haven't seen the Norseman or Northman. I haven't written
The Northman.
The Northman. That is also, like, all of his stories are just dark and dreadful. And Willem Dafoe, every time he shows up, you're like, yeah!
Yeah.
Because he is always like a wacky character, but he always makes it so much better.
He does, yeah. How funny seeing him in Beetlejuice, and then seeing him in this.
It's quite different.
Very different. Yeah. I think for, the visuals, to see an updated version that does justice to the original, if you're a fan of monster movies and period pieces, honestly, I would sell this as like a period drama, almost more than a horror, but it is filled with dread. So go in knowing that. But I would say for that, it is a keeper.
Yeah, it's absolutely worth at least a watch.
Yeah.
Even if you watch it at home, just make sure the lights are off, because it'll being immersed is very helpful in this.
Yeah,
type of
I feel
movie.
like I want to watch this. If I were to watch it again, I don't even like wine, but I feel like I need like a glass of wine and like something
I'll
fancy.
be having a glass of blood.
Yeah, you would. Let us know if you saw Nosferatu.
Yes.
And what you thought of Nosferatu.
And if you would drink blood if given the opportunity.
What was that?
Nosferatu's
What?
here.
It sounded like a bat. Right? Did that not sound like a bat?
It might be the mice. They like to hang out in the ceiling.
Is it mice with wings?
It might be. They might have evolved.
That legitimately sounded like a bat. That's so weird. I'm getting out of here.
That's good.
Nosferatu!
Hey, you made it to the end of the video. Very cool. If you liked this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and to the Keep Up podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. You can also find us at patreon.com/thekeepup, where you can support us monthly for as little as $1 per month, and you can get yourself some cool Keep Up merch in our Etsy shop. Links are down below.
Ready to get started?
On what?
We're doing the bumpers, aren't we?
Yes, we're doing the bumpers. Do you have, you got the remote?
Of course.
Just hit record and we're ready to go.
All right.